Hello students, today we will study lesson 3 of Moments, Supplementary Reader Class 9 English. The name of the lesson is Iswaran, the Storyteller by R.K. Lakshman. R.K. Lakshman was a very famous Indian author and a well-known cartoonist. He has given his drawing and sketches in many of the Indian serials as well. Now coming back to the story, Iswaran the Storyteller. It is about a man, Iswaran, who is a good storyteller. He narrates the story in such a beautiful way that his master Mahendra always listened to him with all his ears. He narrated the story using all his expressions and voice modulation that his story seems to be real to his master, and that is we'll see in the story how well he narrated the story. The story also highlights the fact that we should be bold enough to make decisions in all circumstances, and we should not be influenced by any superstitions until and unless we have belief or faith on it. Come to next page. There are two important characters in the story, Iswaran and Mahendra, where Iswaran is a wonderful storyteller, good cook, source of entertainment, he is religious and he is fond of reading books. Whereas Mahendra was an unmarried man. He worked as a junior supervisor. He is quite accommodating and adjusting person, a very simple man. He was a good listener, rational and a practical man who doesn't believe in ghosts. And he was a fearful man. No, it's very contrary. Though he was a fearful man, but he did not believe in a ghost. Come to next page. Iswaran the Storyteller. The story was narrated to Ganesh by a young man, Mahendra by name. He was a junior supervisor in firm which offered on hire supervisors at various types of construction sites, factories, bridges, dams and so on. So Mahendra narrated the story to Ganesh. And who was Mahendra? He was a junior supervisor. His job was to supervise and hire the supervisors on the worksite area of factories or bridges and other places. He had to keep moving from place to place as ordered by his head office, and it could be a coal mining area or a railway bridge construction site, or it could be a chemical plant for several months. Come to next page. He was a bachelor. His needs were simple and he was able to adjust himself to all kinds of odd conditions, whether it was an ill-equipped circuit house or a makeshift canvas tent in the middle of stone quarry. So he was unmarried and quite accommodating and adjustable person, and he could adjust himself in any of the place, and it can be a tent or a well-equipped house. But one asset he had was his cook Iswaran. The cook was quite attached to Mahendra and followed him uncomplainingly wherever he was posted. He cooked for Mahendra, washed his clothes and chatted away with his master at night. He could weave endless stories and anecdotes on varied subjects. Now students, what is asset? It is a valuable thing which we keep with us. And yes, Iswaran was very valuable to his master Mahendra. He was a cook. He used to do all the daily chores in his house, and at night he used to weave and narrate endless stories on varieties of subjects. Second para, Iswaran also had an amazing capacity to produce vegetables and cooking ingredients. Seemingly out of nowhere, in the middle of a desolate landscape with no shops available for miles around. Now here Mahendra is telling that it was so surprising to him that how Iswaran can manage to bring all the fruit items or vegetables and other food ingredients and cook a delicious food for him. He would miraculously conjure up the most delicious dishes made with fresh vegetables within an hour of arriving, at the zinc sheet shelter at the new workplace. So this was very, very surprising for Mahendra that miraculously Iswaran could bring out all the fruits and vegetables and other ingredients and prepare food for his master before he comes from the workplace. Mahendra would be up early in the morning and leave for work for after breakfast, carrying some prepared food with him. Meanwhile, Iswaran would tidy up the shed, wash the clothes and have a leisurely bath, pouring several buckets of water over his head, muttering a prayer all the while. Now these are the daily routine of Mahendra and Iswaran. Mahendra used to get up in the morning after his breakfast, he go for his workplace, whereas Iswaran do all the daily course, and after this he take bath and mutters his prayer. After eating, he would read for a while before dozing off. Yes, we know that he is fond of reading, so before taking an afternoon nap, he used to read books. The book was usually some popular Tamil thriller, running to hundreds of pages. Its imaginative descriptions and narratives flourishes would hold Iswaran in thrall. So we can see that Iswaran was very fond of reading books and daily job was to read the book and express it and describe in a very imaginative way in his stories. His own descriptions were greatly influenced by Tamil authors that he read. When he was narrating even the smallest of incidents, he would try to work in suspense and a surprise ending into an account. So here Mahendra is telling about the way Iswaran used to narrate the story. His stories were greatly influenced by the Tamil authors that he used to read daily. And even the small incident Iswaran used to describe in a very suspense and a dramatic way. And he gave the example here that instead of saying that he had come across an uprooted tree on the highway, he would say with eyebrows suitably arched and hands held out in a dramatic gestures. So with all the expressions and gestures, he used to narrate the story or used to narrate a very small incident in a very dramatic way. The road was deserted and I was all alone. Suddenly, I spotted something that looked like an enormous bushy beast lying sprawled across the road. I was half inclined to turn and go back. But as I came closer, I saw it was a fallen tree with its dry branches spread out. Mahendra would stretch himself back in his canvas chair and listen to Iswaran's tales uncritically. So this is how Iswaran described a small incident of a fallen tree in a dramatic way by saying that he was all alone on the road and he saw a huge beast lying across the road. And then when he suddenly went towards that beast, he saw that it was just a fallen tree. So here we can see that how good story narrator Iswaran was. And Mahendra would listen with all his ears, with all his curiosity. Come to next page, children. The place I come from is famous for timber. This is the native place he is talking about. Iswaran would begin. There is a richly wooded forest all around. The logs are hauled onto the lorries by elephants. They are huge, well-fed beasts. When they turn wild, even the most experienced Mahot is not able to control them. So here Iswaran is telling to Mahendra that his village was famous for all the timbers and it was surrounded by huge forest full of trees. Where the logs of the timbers were used for commercial purpose and it was loaded and took by the elephant. Now he is asking to Mahendra that if an elephant goes mad, even the Mahot cannot control over that beast. After this prologue, Iswaran would launch into an elaborate anecdote involving an elephant. So he is creating a background for the next story. It's telling about the place where the timber was used, and it was loaded by elephants. One day, a tusker escaped from the timber yard and began to roam about, stamping on bushes, tearing up wild creepers, and breaking branches at will. You know, sir, how an elephant behaves when it goes mad. So here he has started a story of his village that once a tusker escaped from the timber yard. An elephant escaped from that forest area and was destroying all the things. He's telling, you see how an elephant behaves when it goes mad. Iswaran would get so caught up in the excitement of his own story that he would get up from the floor and jump about, stamping his feet in emulation of the mad elephant. So while narrating this incident, he used to imitate the gestures, imitate the elephant, how elephant stomped his feet, the same way Iswaran was depicting by using all his actions and hands. The elephant reached the outskirts of a town, breaking the fences down like a matchstick. He continued. That elephant reached now to the outskirts and came to the town. He would continue. It came into the main road and smashed all the stalls selling fruits, mud pots, and clothes. People ran helter and skelter in panic. The elephant now entered the school ground where the children were playing, breaking through the brick wall. So now he's telling in the story that how the elephant has destroyed everything in the town and how it entered into the school by breaking the bricks of the walls. All the boys ran into the classrooms and pulling up and shut the doors tight. The beast grunted and wandered about, kicking and flattening the drum cap for water and uprooting the shrubs. Meanwhile, all the teachers had climbed up to the depredation of the elephant. There were not a soul below on the ground. The streets were empty, as if the inhabitants of the entire town had suddenly disappeared. Now see how deeply he is describing in the story that what destructions the elephant has done in the town, that he has destroyed all the volleyball nets, and he just broke the wall and he just spilled out the water, uprooting the terrace, so on. Now he continued further. I was studying in the junior class at that time and was watching the whole drama from the rooftop. Coming to him, he is telling that he was watching all the dramas which was done by the elephant while he was in junior class. I don't know what came over me suddenly. I grabbed a cane from the hands of one of the teachers and ran down the stairs and into the open. So he took a cane from the teacher and he ran downwards towards the elephant. The elephant scrumpted and menacingly swung a branch of a tree which it held in its trunk. It stamped its feet, kicking up a lot of mud and dust. It looked frightening, but I moved slowly towards it, stick in hand. People were watching the scene, hypnotized from nearby housetops. So he's telling that what all that elephant was doing, he was stamping on a feet, kicking up the mud and dust, and it was looking very, very frightful scene. Everyone was looking at this elephant and to him. The elephant looked at me red-eyed, ready to rush towards me. It lifted its trunk and trumpeted loudly. At that moment, I moved forward and, mustering all my force, wagged its third toenail on the quick. So it's describing that elephant was having a red eye and he was running towards this boy,, and suddenly, very bravely, very bravely, Iswaran gathered his courage. Muttering means to collect or to gather. He just collected all his courage within himself and he just hit the third toenail of that elephant. Come to next page, children. The beast looked stunned for a moment. Then it shivered from head to foot and collapsed. And so he said that when I hit the third toenail of the elephant, after a while this huge elephant shivered and collapsed. Collapse means to fall down. At this point, Iswaran would leave the story unfinished and get up mumbling, "I'll be back after lighting the gas and warming up the dinner." So now Iswaran has not given a complete end to the story. And after this, he just went off and told that okay, he has to turn off the gas. Mahendra who had been listening with rapid attention, would be left hanging. When he returned, Iswaran would not pick up the thread of the story right away. Means he did not discuss anything about the story. Mahendra would have to remind him that the conclusion was pending. And then Iswaran said, after Mahendra asked about the conclusion, Iswaran said that, well, a veterinary doctor was summoned to revive the animal. Iswaran would show casually. 2 days later, it was led away by its mahout to the jungle. So, he has created so much of suspense in the story by all the gestures and expressions. And then in conclusion, when Mahendra asked to Iswaran, he shrugged off his shoulder and told in a very casual way that it was taken by mahout and it was treated by a veterinary doctor, and then it was all okay. Well, how do you manage to do it, Iswaran? How did you bring down the beast? Now look at these lines. Mahendra was so curious to know about Iswaran's bravery. He asked that how he collapsed that elephant, such a huge beast. To which Iswaran replied that it has something to do with the Japanese art, I think, sir. Karate or Jiu-Jitsu, it is called. I had read it somewhere. It temporarily paralyzes the nervous system, you see. Now he's telling to Mahendra that it is because of the Japanese art, karate or Jiu-Jitsu, in which he has taken the training, and that is why he has been able to collapse that huge beast. Now, not a day passed without Iswaran recounting some stories packed with adventure, horror and suspense. So many a time he used to narrate the story with all these elements in his story. It could be suspense, horror or adventure. Whether the story was credible or not, Mahendra enjoyed listening to it because of the imitable way in which it was told. Iswaran seemed to be more than make up for the absence of a TV in Mahendra's living quarters. Now, that is why the title of the story suits over here, that Iswaran narrates in a very dramatic way, full of suspense and thriller, and in an imitable way, that Mahendra did not even wanted any other source of entertainment or TV, and Iswaran was the perfect man who entertained his master at night by narrating the stories in a varieties of subjects. Now one morning when Mahendra was having breakfast, Iswaran asked, "Can I make something special for dinner tonight, sir? After all, today is an auspicious day. According to tradition, we prepare various delicacies to feed the spirits of our ancestors today, sir." So he's talking about a particular day of Amavasya, where in Hindu rituals we used to cook food and delicious foods for the ancestors, and that is why he's asking with his master that can he cook some delicious food on that particular day. That night Mahendra enjoyed the most delicious dinner and complimented Iswaran on his culinary skills. So Iswaran prepared a very delicious dinner for his master that night. And Mahendra appreciated his cooking skills to him. He seemed very pleased, but unexpectedly launched into a most garish account involving the supernatural. Now here again, after all this dinner and after all the dinner, Mahendra was about to know about ghost which Iswaran would narrate. You know, sir, this entire factory area we are occupying was once a burial ground. He started. Mahendra was chucked out of the pleasant reverie he had drifted into after the satisfying meal. I knew on the first day itself when I saw a human skull lying on the path. Even now, I come across a number of skulls and bones. Iswaran continued. Now, after all these things, when Iswaran told to Mahendra, and then he is just about to begin the story of a ghost, to which he said that he saw a human skull lying on the path, and even now he came across to a number of skulls and bones on his way. So Iswaran continued to narrate the story of ghost this time to his master. Come to next page. He went on to narrate how he sometimes saw ghosts at night. And then he continued that many a times he has seen ghosts at night, and told, I am not easily frightened by these things, sir. I am a brave fellow. But one horrible ghost of a woman which appears off and on at midnight during the full moon. It is an ugly creature with matted hair and a shriveled face like a skeleton holding a foetus in its arm. Now this time Iswaran is about to narrate the story of a ghost, and in a very, very practical way without any sort of amusement. And he told that, sir, that when he was coming from that road, he saw a huge a ghost of a woman with a matted hairs and very shriveled face, pale face, and that ghost was holding a skeleton of a newborn baby or unborn baby. Foetus is unborn baby in its arm. Mahendra shivered at the description and interrupted rather sharply. Mahendra was shivered and he was not at all interested to hear the ghost incident of which Iswaran was saying. And he told to Iswaran that you are crazy, Iswaran. There are no such things of ghosts and spirits. And Mahendra, don't believe on ghosts. It is all a figment of your imagination. Get your digestive system examined, and maybe your head as well. You are talking nonsense. So Mahendra is not at all interested in listening the ghost incident of Iswaran, and he told to take rest and examine the digestive system. He left the room and retired for the night, expecting Iswaran to sulk for a couple of days. But the next morning, he was surprised to find the cook as cheerful and talkative as ever. So Mahendra was thinking he fine for a few days Iswaran will be okay and he will not say anything because he has scolded Iswaran. But what he saw that Iswaran was very, very cheerful and talkative as earlier. From that day on, Mahendra, for all his brave talk, went to bed with a certain unease. Now, Mahendra over here, he just knew that he was brave, and then he just went to bed with certain unease. He was not feeling very, very comfortable that night. Every night he peered into the darkness and outside through the window next to his bed. So Mahendra was very uncomfortable this particular night. Come to next page. Every night he peered into the darkness outside through the window next to his bed and trying to make sure that there was no movement of dark shapes in the vicinity. But he could only see a sea of darkness with the twinkling lights of the factories mile away. So what Mahindra was doing, he used to get up every night, look outside of the window that everything is fine out or not. And what he can see, he just could see that there was all the darkness all around with twinkling stars. He had always liked to admire the milk white landscape on full moon night. He loved watching the night scene in the outside from the balcony. But after hearing Iswaran's story of the female ghost, he avoided looking out of his window altogether when the moon was full. But since then, Ishwaran has told about the ghost incident, that he has seen the ghost. From that particular day, now Mahindra was not very happy to see outside the window that milky landscapes. Something was tickling in his mind, that if Ishwaran is whether telling right or wrong. He avoided looking out of the window because of that little bit of fear which was there in his mind. Now one night, Mahindra was woken up from his sleep by a low moan close to his window. Now what happened to the one very night? Mahindra got up from his sleep. Why? Because he heard a low moaning voice from outside the window. At first, he put it down to a cat prowling around for mice. He first thought that maybe a cat was there, so he didn't give much of the thought. But the sound was too guttural for a sight which would stop his heart. Now, after avoiding for long very time, the noise was increasing, and now he could not stop himself. That what was the noise coming from? It could not be the noise of that cat. Feline means from belonging to the cat's family. He could not resist the temptation any more. Lowering himself to the level of the window, he looked away. Was a dark, cloudy form clutching a bundle. Now, after hearing for so long that continuous noise of moaning, he thought to look outside the window. He didn't able to control himself. And then, when he looked out of the window, he saw an imaginary figure of a kind of ghost who was clutching a bundle, holding a bundle in its hand. Mahindra broke into a cold sweat and fell back on the pillow, panting. Now his heartbeat started beating fast. His blood gone cold because of fear, and then he just gone back to his bed. As he gradually recovered from the ghastly experience, he began to reason with himself and finally concluded that it must have been some sort of autosuggestion, some trick that his subconscious mind has played on him. Now he is thinking that maybe it is because of that thought which Ishwaran has told, the incident of ghost. It may be because of his subconscious mind he has seen that figure of the ghost, and he did not even give much of that thought towards it. By the time he had got up in the morning, had a bath, and come out to have his breakfast, the horror of the previous night had faded from his memory. So all this thing which he was experiencing last particular night of the ghost, he was scared, and then he just told to himself, no, everything is fine. It could be the subconsciousness state of mind or a trick which has been played on him. Now it's perfectly okay. Now in the next morning, while he was taking the breakfast, he just forgot that memory of the last night incident. Iswaran greeted him at the door with his lunch packet and his bag. So, as daily routine, Iswaran would give the lunch packet to his master. Just as Mahindra was stepping out, Iswaran grinned and said, "Sir, remember the other day when I was telling you about the female ghost with the foetus in its arm? You were so angry with me for imaginative things. So it's questioning from Mahendra that when he narrated the incident of that foetus and the ghost, he was scolded by Mahendra. He's reminding to his master now about that incident. Well, you saw yourself last night. I came running hearing the sound of moaning that was coming from your room. And now he's telling to his master Mahendra that you avoided and you just scolded with the thought of that ghost. But now, last night, I heard a crying noise or a moaning noise from your room. And now he's creating a suspense of that ghost over here. A chill went down at Mahendra's spine. Again, Mahendra was scared. He thought to forget the incident, but somewhere in his mind, because of Iswaran, he could not forget the last night incident. He did not wait for Iswaran to complete his sentence. He hurried away to his office and handled in his papers, resolving to leave the haunted place the very next day. So he did not say anything to Iswaran about that ghost or about that cry or about that imaginative figure which he has seen last night. He did not say anything to Iswaran, and then he ran off to his place. And what he did? He just resigned from that company, from that job, to leave that haunted place, and just because of the fear of that ghost. So this was all about the story. I hope you understood. Thank you.